More rain,
I do, yeah.
not just snow, more rain too.
More rain.
Well, I take it it's 5 o'clock and we'll open the meeting up May 6th. Any changes to the agenda? Public comment?
I have a question.
Yep.
What's the format of this meeting gonna be? Will I have a chance to clarify or comment as we go along, or do I need to say everything right now?
I was going to say that we had a complaint and I had turned it over to legal counsel and let them have their say, and then we'd go through their suggested corrections.
Do you want to comment now or?
That's what I'm asking.
Do you want to?
Do you want to?
Oh, it's public comment, do it now.
No, all right, I need 2 minutes. I've written it down. Speaking up is not easy, especially in this town. This isn't fun. Entering executive session should not be a foregone conclusion. Treating it as such and adding executive session to an agenda at the last minute, especially when no topic is specified, makes it easy to forget to vote on it an hour and a half later when the end of the meeting rolls around. Executive session requires discussion and a vote, sometimes 2 votes. With no topic specified, there can't be any discussion, and select board members shouldn't vote on what they don't know it is. Some topics authorized by statute require more than 1 vote before entering executive session. With no topic specified, there can be no way of knowing if that statutory limitation applies. The time to determine if a topic is appropriate or properly cited is not 2 weeks after the fact. It's before the vote to enter executive session even takes place. Making that determination inevitably requires some judgment, but that judgment should be the collective judgment of the select board members, not one person's say so, and the question of appropriateness requires a better answer than sort of. Western Select Board has 5 smart members, all equal no matter how long they've served, and each has 1 vote. They've been trusted to conduct the public's business where it should be conducted in public. When an exception arises, the need for executive session should be explained, discussed, and properly cited before a vote takes place. This is the open meeting law. It's not some dark, dusty corner of the statutes. While trying to bring violations to the select board's attention, I've offered up recommendations from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, others with experience in the statutes themselves. The evidence is the select board's own records. What I ask is that the select board exercise its collective judgment to decide the violations I've pointed out were inadvertent and adopt specific measures to actually prevent future violations.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good.
Any other comments? She just sitting up there. So we'll go on to item 3. We've had an open meeting law complaint, and like I said, I referred it to council. Council care to comment?
Thanks. Yes, I appreciate that. So I'll just kind of go over what our role here was, and what we did is we reviewed the complaint, the open meeting law violation complaint, and we had conversations with members of the select board regarding the events and executive sessions that precipitated the complaint. In our review, we concluded that the executive sessions on February 11th, February 25th, and March 11th were permissible, but there were areas that the select board could have provided a better record in order to ensure that the appropriate findings were made on the record prior to entering executive session. So what we recommended to the select board in that regard is just to ensure that they go through and clarify the basis with respect to each of those meetings in which they entered an executive session, what the basis for the executive session was, and that they go through and ratify the decision to enter into executive session for the appropriate purposes. We provided the select board with some recommendations on that, and the select board can choose to follow them or not if it wishes.
If I may add, I believe the conversations you had with select board members was individuals at a time. It wasn't the whole group.
Correct, yes.
So Meryl, can I ask a question? Will these steps, if we go through the steps that you've recommended, does will that require us to, at our next select board meeting, approve again the minutes? Because in some cases you're recommending amending the minutes. So I'm assuming that at our next select board meeting, we would have to approve the amended minutes of those meetings. Is that correct?
So I think the motion we're recommending that you make is a motion to amend those minutes. And then, yes, I think you should approve them as amended once the amended minutes are prepared and ready to review and approve, so that you end up with an accurate record of the amended minutes. And the amendment to the minutes are only to reflect things that actually happened at the meeting. We're not amending, our recommendation is not to amend minutes to otherwise cure any deficiencies that aren't actually reflected on the record. So if you take a look at our recommendation, what we're saying is in some of the minutes, they just omitted the fact that a vote was taken when it was in fact taken, and you can see that on the GNAT record.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure. I also want to clarify one other thing, just in response to the public comment, that the select board can enter into an executive session, and any select board meeting, whether or not it appears on the agenda, as long as it makes the requisite findings that are statutorily required. So the fact that there is no executive sessions called for on the agenda does not mean that the select board cannot enter one if it deems that it is necessary and the board appropriately votes on the record that it has made the statutory findings to enter into an executive session.
That wasn't my point, and the GNAT recordings do not show those votes.
I think that was responsive to what I just said.
The issue is not that the select board can't add an executive session, but just as a hypothetical, on the 11th, move to enter executive session, no vote recorded in the minutes, the vote's not on the recording from GNAT, and it's to discuss personnel matters. Then no action was taken, so no one will ever know what happened in that meeting.
So I think everybody should go through, I think the select board should now go through the recommendations we made, because as I just said, we're not saying that the select board should amend minutes where the vote was not actually reflected in the GNAT recording. We are only saying that they may do that for the February 25th meeting, because the vote was taken, the vote was reflected on the video of the meeting. And so with respect to the February 25th meeting, an amendment to the meeting minutes to accurately reflect the vote that was taken is appropriate.
So I'm going to suggest that we go through the script here, and then if you have any comments after that, Ken, no problem. Okay.
I think that's a good suggestion.
Yeah. Okay. So these are the recommendations that we received from Merrill. As to the February, excuse me, 11th, 2025 meeting, first of all, we deny that the executive session was impermissible under 1 VSA 313 because it was for the purpose of discussing the appointment or employment or evaluation of a public officer or employee, which is allowable purpose under 1 VSA 313A3. Specifically, the select board entered into executive session on February 11th, 2025 5, for the purpose of discussing and vetting possible candidates for the town's road foreman and road crew positions. B, deny as a legal matter, the select board was required to make a specific finding that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or person involved at substantial disadvantage before entering executive session for the purpose of discussing such appointment or employment or evaluation of a public officer or employee. And C, while the February 11th executive session was authorized under the open meeting law, acknowledge that the select board did not conduct the requisite motion and vote to enter executive session. For that reason, I move to ratify the decision of February 11th to enter executive session for the purpose of considering the appointment or employment or evaluation of a public officer or employee.
Second.
Any other discussion?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, as to the February 25th, 2025 meeting. A, deny that the executive session was impermissible under 1 VSA 313 because it was for the purpose of discussing the appointment or employment or evaluation of a public officer or employee, which is an allowable purpose under 1 VSA 313A3. Specifically, the select board entered into executive session on February 25th, 2025 for the purpose of continued discussions and vetting of possible candidates for the town's road foreman and road crew positions. B, deny as a legal matter that the select board was required to make a specific finding that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or person involved at a substantial disadvantage before entering executive session for the purpose of discussing such appointment or employment or evaluation of a public officer or employee. And C, while the February 25th executive session was authorized under open meeting law, acknowledge that the meeting minutes do not reflect the vote to enter executive session, but deny that such a vote did not occur as reflected in the video of the meeting. In order to accurately reflect the record, I move to amend the February 25th, 2025 meeting minutes to accurately reflect the vote.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And 3, as to the March 11th, 2025 meeting, deny that the executive session was impermissible under 1 VSA 313 because it was for the purpose of discussing a delinquent tax matter that implicated probable civil litigation involving the town, the need for attorney-client communication for the purpose of obtaining the advice of legal counsel, and the evaluation of a public officer or employee in regard to that matter, all of which are allowable purposes under 1 VSA 313A. And B, while the March 11th executive session was authorized under the open meeting law, we acknowledge that the select board was not sufficiently clear in articulating the business of that executive session or making a finding that premature general public knowledge of the matter would clearly place the town or persons involved in a substantial disadvantage. For those reasons, I move to ratify the decision of March 11th to enter executive session for the stated purposes.
A second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And for the record, I would like to add that Merrill's advice to us, the select board, is that it would be prudent for the select board to adopt specific measures, to prevent future violations. These include training select board members and support staff on the Vermont open meeting law. VLCT has an on-demand open meeting law basics training course available here, and there's a link to that. Developing and implementing a crib sheet of permissible executive session reasons and specific statutory citations to be used during select board meetings. We recommend, Merrill, recommend that when moving to enter into executive session, the select board provides sufficient detail about the matter it intends to consider in executive session tied to one of the 15 enumerated categories in the statutes. And C, ensuring that the town is complying with one VSA 312K requirement to complete an annual open meeting law training available, and there's also a citation there.
And that's the Secretary of State's website, just to be clear.
Yeah, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Do we need a motion for those recommendations?
You've approved them all.
No, the recommendations are simply recommendations.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This is the crib sheet. Yeah,
It's here.
yeah. So, and we'll look at those and approve those at our next meeting, I think.
I think that's a good idea. I'd like you, I think it would be ideal if I understand that some of you are probably seeing the recommendations for the first time. So you may want to just examine those options so that you can discuss them at your next meeting. And if you think that there are some that would be particularly helpful to the board, you can go ahead and implement them. However, I would just note that the requirement to complete the annual open meeting law training is not an optional one.
Right.
And Meryl, that training is to be completed by each member of the select board, not just by the chair, is that right? Because one of them is just the chair one of the training sessions is just the chair.
Ethics and open meeting law is for everyone now, as of July 1st.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
And frankly, even if they're not, it's very helpful, I think, if everybody in the room understands what the requirements are, because then look, we're all just trying to do our best, and that way if one person forgets, if the chair sometimes forgets that something should be happening, maybe somebody else knows to pipe up and say, hey, don't forget that we need to do X and Y. I think it's helpful for everybody to just be up on those requirements and just the mechanisms for doing all of that, because I think it's clear that while all of what the purposes for entering those executive sessions were perfectly appropriate, it is also important to make sure that the mechanics are correct too.
Yeah.
So can I ask, I'm sorry, I have one more question, Meryl. If we are clear about the subject of the executive session and the reason for going into executive session, there's no requirement that that there be an action taken. There doesn't have the executive session doesn't have to result in an action taken.
Correct.
Right?
It does not. It does not need to result in an action taken. However, if the board does take an action as a result of an executive session, that must occur in the open session.
Got it. Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
Good.
So is everyone comfortable with reading these preventive measures over and discuss them on Tuesday 13th?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we definitely ought to have that on the agenda.
Sure.
For that meeting.
Anything else?
That was the conversation I requested in my email on March 21st. So thank you for your time and thank you for finally having that discussion. I hope that moving forward, people will stop referring to Weston's executive sessions as a black hole. No one knows what's going on. If you adopt these steps, that'd be great. That's the conversation I asked for back in March, not this. This didn't have to happen.
Okay.
Great. All set with us, folks?
Yeah, I'm gonna move
Thank you so
adjournment.
much, Meryl.
Great. Thank you.
Second.
Have a good night.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yeah.